Welcome to Joy News today. I am Daniel Daze. Coming up in the bulletin, National House of Chiefs rejects yes vote in the upcoming referendum on December 17. We get details. 2 persons sustained injuries in Bimbilla after police and military fire warning shots to disperse a charged crowd. Meanwhile, curfew imposed on Bimbilla and surrounding townships renewed. University of Ghana announces work of a 5-member committee set up to look into recent sexual harassment claims concluded. In business, Tullow Oil deepens local content by awarding $240 million contracts to indigenous firms. Stay with us for details. Great to have you with us. In our first story, 2 persons have sustained injuries in Bimbilla after police and military fired warning shots to disperse a charged crowd. JoyNews gathers the late Nakbana's family, who were earlier served notice by the security not to celebrate the Damba festival this year, had defied the directive and had gathered for the celebration. According to Municipal Chief Executive of the area, Abdullah Yakub, the police were called in to enforce the Supreme Court's verdict and the MUSEC directive. He said there has been security reinforcement to ensure the celebration would be peaceful. He added that preparations are underway for the legitimate regions to celebrate the festival. The MCE said various chiefs within the area have started converging for the celebration. Mr. Yakub noted that there is calm in the area and people are about their duties. The 2 persons are currently receiving treatment at the Bimbilla Government Hospital, and the Bimbilla skin has been in contention since 2013 between the Dawuni and Nakba families. But in 2017, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the Dawuni family. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Interior has renewed the curfew on Bimbilla and its surrounding township. Here are excerpts of that curfew now on your screen. The Minister for Interior has, by executive instrument, renewed the curfew hours for Bimbilla Township and its environs in the northern region from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. effective Friday, November 15, 2019. That's today. Government continues to urge chiefs, opinion leaders, youth, and people of the area to exercise restraint in the face of challenges confronting them and to use non-violent means to channel their energies into ensuring peace in the area. Meanwhile, there is a total ban on all persons in the Bimbilla Township and surrounding areas from carrying guns, ammunition, or any offensive weapons, and any persons found with any arms or ammunition will be arrested and prosecuted. It's signed by Ambrose Derry, MP and Minister for Interior. We stay with security in the northern sector of Ghana because the Savannah Regional Police Command has denied allegations of shooting and killing one Abdullah Mustafa, a resident of the town. In an interview with JoyNews in Damongo, the regional police commander, DCOP Enoch Educhum Bediako, said his officers only went to the deceased house to carry out a lawful duty following complaints to the service about death threats allegedly issued by the deceased to his mother. The command is therefore distancing itself from any involvement and responsibility in relation to circumstances leading to the death of the deceased.
13th November 2019, at about 12:50 hours, Police Daboya had information that one mentally challenged person called Mustafa Abdullah was attacking the mother, one Hawa, in their house. The station officer, who is an inspector, 2 NCOs, and 1 Muhammad Chiduru, a CPA personnel, proceeded to the scene. On reaching the house, the police heard the woman screaming for help in a room, with Abdullah Mustafa standing behind the door, trying to break into the room. Mustafa was holding a long spear, a knife, and a club. Mustafa, on seeing the police, turned the attack on them. In a bid to retreat and to re-strategize, the CPA slipped and fell. Mustafa, the mentally challenged, stabbed the CPA on the rib. Mustafa continued to chase the police and threw the club that he was holding against the police, which hit the forehead of the inspector and started bleeding. With the help of the community, the inspector and the CPA personnel were rushed to the Daboya Government Hospital.
Ambediaku maintains Abdullahi Mustafa died in the hands of some residents who later dragged his lifeless body to the Daboya police. The police denial is in response to an eyewitness account alleging that the police shot and killed the deceased in defense. Let's get more from the commander on this story. Many thanks for joining us, DCOP. At what point did your men leave Abdullahi Mustafa for the residents to lynch him?
Hello?
DCOP, are you with us?
Yes, sir.
Great. When you examined the body of Abdullahi Mustafa, how did he die? DCOP, how did he die? Was he beaten? Was he shot? What happened?
Okay. All right. Yeah, he was lynched by the some of the youth of the community.
Did he sustain gunshot wounds?
Pardon?
Did he sustain gunshot wounds?
No, not at all, no.
Okay.
There wasn't any gun firing.
So from the account you gave earlier, your officials went to the house and then they had to leave. At what point did they leave the house?
When they went to meet the deceased, on seeing the police, he started chasing them. So it was at that point when the CPA personnel fell and he stabbed him, whereby the community helped to convey the police inspector who was hurt and the CPA guy to the hospital. So they were at the hospital when they had the information that the disease was attacking other people and the community also did not sit down and lynch him to death. After that, they conveyed the body to the forecourt of the police station. So the police came to meet the body at the forecourt of the police station when they were returning from the hospital.
Did the police see who brought the body to the station?
It is a community.
Did the police recognize any members of the community who brought the body to the station?
Yes, because at that time we had a counter NCO on the ground, and there was a large crowd which came to the station.
Have you been able to arrest any of these people whom the counter NCO identified?
Not yet.
At the time that these people were brought in...
At the moment, our attention is on our boy who is on admission at the Tamale Teaching Hospital.
Some would say that the account seems strange, that the community members, after killing someone, would bring the dead body to the police station.
Yes, because I believe he had attacked the police. That's why. That's my belief.
That's
because
your belief.
The police have been injured out of his action.
Okay, so the people killed the man and brought him to the police with no fear of being arrested?
At the moment, we haven't effected any arrest.
There are a couple of facts in the account. What was this man holding when they got to the house? You said earlier he was holding a spear, a knife, and a club.
Spear, a knife and a club.
A spear, a knife, and a club. These three items were in his hand. and he saw 4 officials. Were the officials armed?
Pardon?
Were the officials armed? The chief inspector, the 2 NCOs, and the CPA?
No. When they went there, they were not armed. They were not armed.
So
no.
when they saw this man holding these 3 implements in his hands, they immediately ran away?
Yeah, they were trying to talk to him, trying to convince him to lay down the implements we were holding. It was then and then he started chasing the police. Because as the police were going to him, they were talking to him. They were talking, trying to let him cool down and put the implements down. Then he turned and started chasing them. Then he also had to retreat.
So 4 police officials, DCOP, 4 police officials went to one man who was handling 3 things in his 2 hands, and they ran away from him.
With a spear and a knife?
You said 3 things, a spear, a knife, and a club.
And a club, yes.
So he was handling these 3 things. The knife was in his pocket.
Spear and a club in one hand.
Great. And then when they saw him, they ran away from him.
They did not just run away when they saw him, because they were talking to him. He was behind the door.
And he started chasing them at a point.
Is
it normal for the police to run away when someone who seems offensive to makes an overture to try and attack them? Is it regular for the police to run away?
That is part of the strategy, because you will not stand there. Once you are not armed, you will not stand there for him to come and kill you. No, that is unprofessional.
Okay, so how is it then, DCOP, that this man who was able to chase away 4 policemen with the implements in his hand could not defend himself against these citizens?
Against the mob?
Did you see the number of people who brought him to the police station?
According to the station orderly, it was a large crowd. Okay.
So these people were able to overpower him. Did he wound or harm anyone in the mob?
No, he was not able to harm.
But he was carrying 3 weapons with which he was able to stab a police officer, and he didn't harm anyone in the mob.
No. When the community got to know his actions, that he has become dangerous, mob attack is different from a small group of people going to arrest a deadly person.
DCOP, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you, my brother.
We move away from that story, and the chairperson of the National Commission for Civic Education, NCCE, wants media and all stakeholders to join the campaign to educate Ghanaians on the upcoming local level elections and referendum to avoid confusion. This follows a seeming misunderstanding of what exactly the referendum seeks to achieve. Speaking on JoyNews Prime with Israel, Josephine Nkrumah explained the referendum will not ensure the election of MMDCEs as being misconstrued by sections of the public. A yes vote in the referendum will only give political parties a go-ahead to sponsor and field candidates for local level elections.
We find 3 things. There's a first ballot to elect our unit committee members, and on that ballot you have up to 5 persons that you can vote for. And then you're going to have the second one, the election of your assembly member in your electoral area. And the third one, in relation to the referendum, where the question is put, whether you want to see political parties participating in local governance. So 3 things are required of us. You vote for your unit committee member, you vote for your assembly member, and then you vote yes. When you vote yes, it presupposes that you want to amend, you want to see Article 55(3) being amended, and the implication is that it will allow political parties to participate in local governance. If you vote no, then it means that you want the status quo to remain and you would not like to see political parties participating in local governance. That is required of the citizenry. So that is cleared. So December 17th, any anything to do with election of MMDCs has nothing to do with the citizenry. We are not going to elect. We are not going to vote on that matter. That matter is being catered for by Parliament, because the article that must be amended to take away the powers from the President and give to the electorate is a non-entrenched provision, which means that constitutionally it's the parliamentarians have the power to amend that article. And that Article 243 is what is before Parliament. Now, when Parliament amends, let's assume that Parliament amends this article, it means that Ghanaians would now be able to vote for their MMDCs. So whether or not there is a referendum, the change would be Ghanaians would now be allowed to elect their MMDCs, and therefore you would be putting the MMDCs in the same category as the unit committee and assembly members. Now, come December 17, the question is then posed, how would you like to see this done? Would you like to see it done along partisan lines? Okay. Would you like to see parties participating? And that is when you would cast your vote to say, yes, I want to see it, or no, I don't want to see it. I want the status quo to be that local governance is without multi-party participation.
But then it also means, from what you're explaining, that the decision or the amendment to the bill or the constitutional clause that Parliament is going to undertake,
yes,
is likely to impact on the December 17 referendum one way or the other. Because if they vote and they say, they get a 2/3 majority,
yes,
saying that, yes, let's have MMDCs elected, then if you're going to the polls, as you're saying, when you're voting a yes, you're voting a yes to have MMDCs, unit committee members, and assembly members all elected.
By multi-party. Or if you say no, then we're going to remain as local governance, as Article 55(3) says, that political parties cannot participate in local governance.
We stay on the subject because the National House of Chiefs is rejecting a yes vote in the upcoming district level elections and referendum on December 17. A statement jointly signed by President Togbe Apede the 14th and his Vice President Dasibre Nana Kwebu Ewusi the 7th is causing the citizenry to be wary of the introduction of cooked unbridled partisan politics into local government, unquote. The chiefs are thus requesting a reassessment of the proposed referendum before it's conducted. My colleague Malik Abbas Dabo joins me in the studio with more. Malik, what more is the House of Chiefs saying?
So this is a 2-page statement issued by the National House of Chiefs, 6-point issues with the decision of the authorities to conduct this referendum slated for December 17. Let me just go through some of the issues that they raised. The first one is, we are concerned that the introduction of partisan politics into the local government will be accompanied by the unwholesome political culture and the corruption associated with partisan politics, which has already done a lot of harm to our society and economy. The other issue they raise is that the incidence of exclusiveness, the unhealthy politicization of all issues, and the marginalization of the citizenry who do not belong to the ruling party, and the exclusion of skilled manpower on partisan grounds would be detrimental to development and good governance at the local level. Then they raise the issue about, they say currently the appointment of 30% government appointees to local assemblies has been totally vitiated by partisan politics, with the result that appointments are determined by party membership, to the virtual exclusion of traditional authorities and other non-political groups, a total travesty of principles of good governance. By every democratic principle, they say, traditional authorities and other non-political groups must have a legitimate say in the use of resources and the selection and location of development projects financed by such resources. The last point they make is the effective decentralization would be adversely affected by the control of local parties by the headquarters of national political parties. Those are the issues that they raise. On the basis of these, they say they are against the election of assembly members and women, assemblymen and women to the local level, to the local assemblies, on a partisan political basis. So they don't support the referendum which will amend Article 55(3) of the Constitution.
Or at least they don't support a yes vote.
Absolutely.
So the president promised in 2016, or this administration promised, that they will deliver a democratic election of MMDCEs into office. How does this position the chiefs take affect that or change that?
I don't see, Daniel, any correlation between the two. The election of MMDCEs is guided by Article 243 of the Constitution. Now, it is Article 243(1) of the 1992 Constitution, which says that the president shall appoint district chief executives, of course, with the prior endorsement of the assembly. That has absolutely nothing to do with the current state. What is happening is that Article 55(3) says that political parties shall sponsor candidates to any elected office other than district assemblies. So that means that the political parties are barred from sponsoring candidates to district assemblies. What the president promised was election of DCEs, MMDC, that's Metropolitan, Municipal, and District Chief Executive. That's what the president promised. That promise can happen, and indeed there's a bill in Parliament to amend Article 243 of the Constitution to allow that to happen. That has absolutely nothing to do with this. What is happening is that the president and members of his government advocate, and there's a basis for that advocacy, that currently we know, and Afarijan supported this view, and you read Afarijan's comments to Professor Ahoy when he appeared on the Super Morning Show, that whether we like it or not, the political parties, in flagrant violation of the constitutional provision in Article 55(3), are influencing the election of members to the local assemblies.
Right.
So if you go to any district assembly or any municipal assembly or any metropolitan assembly, they know who are MPP assembly members and who are NDC
Sometimes even the party
members.
executive stand for these positions.
Absolutely, which is the reason why the government is arguing. That being the case, just take out this facade in the Constitution and let the political parties sponsor people. Of course, this is what some people, including the opposition NDC and now the National House of Chiefs, against that amendment.
Thank you very much, Malik Abastabo. He's head of investigations here at Joy News. Away from that story, the University of Ghana has announced that the work of the 5-member committee set up into recent sexual harassment claims has been concluded. Speaking at the 2019 congregation ceremony for graduates in the College of Humanities undergraduate programs, Vice-Chancellor Professor Ebenezer Ojo Owusu confirmed that recommendations have been forwarded to him. He pledged to study and act on them accordingly.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, following the recent media reports of alleged sexual harassment cases involving some faculty of the university, management has taken steps to enforce its anti-sexual harassment regulations. Following the broadcast, management set up a 5-member fact-finding committee chaired by Her Ladyship, Justice Retired Vida Akoto Ampofu, to conduct an inquiry into the matter. I'm happy to inform you that the committee submitted its report to me on Tuesday, the 12th of November, 2019. Management will therefore study the report and ensure implementation of the recommendations using the appropriate adjudicatory processes stipulated under the basic law and policies of the university. Meanwhile, the university has created an email address and a dedicated phone number to facilitate and create easy avenues through which all such sexual harassment cases may be reported. We particularly encourage people who may have fallen victim to such unfortunate incidents to take advantage to report them for redress. In response to the ongoing discussion on how to tackle sexual harassment issues going forward, the Center for Gender Studies and Advocacy, CEGENSA, has been tasked to lead in developing a training program to educate members of the university community on what constitutes harassment. It's envisaged that in the not too distant future, every employee of the University of Ghana will be trained in understanding what constitutes sexual and gender harassment and how to respond to it, either as a perpetrator or a victim. Once the framework is developed, it's proposed that the training will be available both online and in other formats and will also be extended to students.
Former President John Dramani Mahama has called on the National Identification Authority to work swiftly to remove all bottlenecks prospective registrants go through to acquire the Ghana card. He said, since the start of the exercise, the process has been slow and that the authority must work to fix the challenge. Mr. Mahama said this at the climax of the Damba Festival in Wa.
Anxious moments inside the century-old Wana's palace. Immediate family members and close relatives of Wana Fusini Sidi Pilipo IV have their hearts in their mouths. They have fears for the unknown. The Wana has a mandatory test he performs every year. He is expected to jump over this dirty white and black cow. This is to test his physical strength. Should any part of his body or gown touches the helpless cow, it is assumed to be a bad omen and may not live to see the next Dumba celebration. He has been successful on 12 occasions and he hopes to be 13 times lucky.
He wouldn't reach next year to come. He will start developing sickness and other things. That is what we believe.
The 67-year-old Wana, wearing a 50-year-old black hat, once worn by his father Botorona Sedu over a faded red smoke, was led in the queue by his public relations officer Osman Froko and sandwiched by the kingmakers and warriors of the Wala Kingdom. They moved round the cow 3 times amid recitation of some verses from the Holy Quran by the Imams. The crowd went dead when the public
has successfully expanded access to water in Wa and surrounding areas. The successful completion of the Upper West Regional Hospital will also improve the health status of the people of the metropolis and the region at large. The commencement of commercial air operations into the Wa airport is also very welcome, and it improves access to the region for business people, for tourists, and actually the residents of Wa itself.
Upper West Regional Minister Dr. Hafiz Bin Sali enumerated some developmental projects embarked on by the government upon assumption of office.
Now, Ghana and Barbados will in a short while cement an agreement which paves the way for the export of qualified nurses to work in the Caribbean health facilities. The MOU was first mooted when President Akufo-Addo visited Barbados in June this year as part of activities to promote the year of return. President Akufo-Addo is addressing the media at Jubilee House now.
And Tema together in a program for future development. So it's a symbol of what we're doing today. To me, is enormous. That the Caribbean and West Africa, CARICOM, ECOWAS, the African Union, the Caribbean, the Americas, how we can forge this strong relationship for the 21st century. The black peoples of the world, we cannot depend on anybody but ourselves in order to find our proper place in the world. And therefore the linkages between us take on a special dimension this century and for the work that has to be done this century to get us away from dependence, to get us away from consistently soliciting for assistance, and arms out, begging. It's time for us to stand on our own 2 feet. And we do that better when we cooperate with each other. So I'm really, really happy that Prime Minister Motley has found an opportunity to come and visit with us here in Ghana. She'll be here for today, tomorrow. I'm going to have the privilege of taking her with me to Yendi to go and watch the Damba Festival. The first time it has been celebrated for 17 years as a result of the peace process there. So we're exposing her to as much as possible. Yesterday she was at Asin Manso and in Cape Coast looking at the slave infrastructure there. And tomorrow she'll be going to see the Damba Festival and the beginning of a new page in the development of Dagbo and of the northern region in our country. So we're immersing her fully in all things Ghanaian, on the understanding that she will be a frequent visitor in Ghana in the years ahead. So, Madam, you're welcome, and we're grateful for your visit. We believe it's a very solid sign of what is possible between us for the future. Thank you. Please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I want first of all to thank you for the extremely warm welcome that you and your officials and the people of Ghana have given not just myself, but our entire delegation, many of whom are not even here, because we actually have a seminar with Ghanaian businessmen that was oversubscribed with over 130 businessmen going on this morning. I said then, as I repeat now, that the only thing that has separated us is a few generations. And this afternoon, as I address the Parliament of Ghana, I will share more with you as to the deep relations that bind us together. This morning, these agreements represent a statement of confidence on our part that we can be for each other that country that will make a difference in our development trajectory. In our own case in Barbados, we have had some challenges with respect to the shortage of nurses, and for us to be able to cure that deficit will take, of necessity, a number of years because of the training that is required. When I raised this with you, when you visited Barbados at Elara Court, you immediately, in a press conference such as this, announced to the people of Barbados and to the wider people that Ghana would step up to the plate to assist us in this respect. I'm happy to report that we have had a team of persons here who have been interviewing, and the chairman of the Queen Elizabeth Hospital has led that delegation, and over the course of the last 10 days that effort has been extremely successful and will be completed by early next week. And we hope that we will be in a position to receive these nurses in early January of 2020. We also reflected on the fact that the cooperation agreement between the Port of Tema and the Port of Bridgetown is absolutely necessary, given the fact that history has proven that the logistics was correct, even if the purposes for which those logistics were being used for centuries was pernicious and inequitable. And I refer, of course, to the fact that the journey from the Gold Coast of Africa to Barbados as the first port of call took place over and over and over for the wrong reasons. It is time, especially as I stand here in Jubilee House, for us to agree that it must now take place for our purposes in our own deliberate manner to be able to shape our economic future for the prosperity of our citizens by ensuring that not only will we be able to trade between Barbados and Ghana, but for each other to use each other as a hub for the opportunity to reach other countries in our region that are not immediately accessible. These are but the first two of many agreements that we anticipate will continue to be signed. But I want to use this opportunity with the media to be able to speak to the people of Ghana as I speak to the people of Barbados. We stand here as leaders of your countries, but we recognize that we act purely in trust for you. The only way our actions will have true meaning is if you, the individual citizens of Ghana and Barbados, take it upon yourselves to consummate this family relationship by ensuring that we trade together, We work together. I give you the assurance, as I will repeat later, we eat the same food, we wear similar clothes, we like the same music, we have similar personalities and sense of humor. We are the same because we are family. And it is up to those of you who are within earshot of our voices to be able to make this a reality and not just simply the promise of rhetoric of two leaders. I have every confidence that our people will make that decisive difference for us in this new journey. I thank you, Mr. President, and I say to those who are here that while the year of return finishes on the 31st of December of this year, and we know that there will be other activities to perpetuate that legacy, which is why we are here, that we gather in 2020, which is our version of your diasporic engagement, will start on the 1st of January 2020 and go parish by parish until December 31st, 2020.
Coming up in business, Tullow Oil deepens local content by awarding $240 million contract to indigenous firms. Stay with us. And that will end this bulletin of Joy News today. Thanks for joining us. Enjoy the weekend. For more news, log on to myjoyonline.com. Up next is the marketplace.